All right, I'm all set. So I'm just getting used to the controls here. My name's James Stroud. I'm the lead developer and founder for Stealth. It's a cryptocurrency. It's a blockchain. It's its own blockchain. And Stealth runs on that blockchain. It's called XST. And today I'm going to talk about quantum proof of stake. It is a new technology that we've released on GitHub. It's in testnet currently. It works. It will be in mainnet soon, and in probably a few months. I believe in long test nets to make sure things work well. And the goals of quantum proof of stake, I'm used to a pointer. Sorry, so I just hit the button as if I was going to point. So the goals of quantum proofs of stake are that they are fast, Feeless, private, and scalable. These are areas where I feel like needs improvement in blockchain. And you can think about Bitcoin and compare to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is actually does none of these things very well. It is relatively fast to other payment systems, confirming in 10 minutes. You can have Feeless transactions, although I assume those are exceedingly rare these days because it's a very popular payment system, and so most transactions need fees. And then private, meaning private anonymous type transactions where you don't know the sender or receiver. And then scalable is in it can be used with a higher throughput than Bitcoin. So then I'm just going to introduce myself and tell you my background. So I'm actually a biochemist by training mostly. So these are all the areas I've studied. I got a BS in molecular biology in Austin at University of Texas, and I got a master's right up Broadway here at Columbia University in biochemistry. Then I did research in molecular genetics at the Texas Biomedical Research Institute. Back whenever I was there, when I was there, it was called the Southwest Foundation for Biomedical Research. And then I studied biochemistry, got a PhD at Boulder in structural biology, studying T-cell energy, immunology, and the structural biology thereof. And then I did amyloid structure at University of California, Los Angeles. And then I became a faculty research assistant professor at University of Mexico, where I studied amyloid structure. And then I made the natural transition to cryptocurrencies, of course. And I joined Breakout Gaming as the CTO. I developed their blockchain and learned some fun stuff whenever I did that. So, what is Stealth? Stealth, this is a background of the coin. It has a fair distribution. It was mined. And then it turned to proof of stake. So it was mined for its distribution like Bitcoin is mined. But then it made a full transition to proof of stake as part of the protocol. We didn't have an ICO, and there's proof of stake. And here's what we want to do with quantum proof of stake, the new technology that I'm talking about, is make it fast and scalable. And on top of the quantum proof of stake, to add a privacy solution, which is not implemented yet, but can be layered on top of quantum proof of stake. Here's a brief history of Stealth. It kind of is my history in blockchain to an extent. I found out about Bitcoin right at the Bitcoin pump. All coins get pumped, and Bitcoin is no exception. And then a few months later, I learned as much as I could about blockchain. I'm still learning. And then I launched my own coin called Stealth with XST as a ticker symbol. I thought Stealth was a cool name, black was a cool color, Stealth was a cool concept. So I just launched my own coin. And back then, that was kind of a norm. People didn't have ICOs. I mean, there was only like maybe 2 ICOs by then that I can think of, Ethereum and Next. And people just did this as a hobby, and that's what it was to me, the hobby. And just, if you want to learn about blockchain, launch your own coin, literally. And then within about 48 hours, it was on Bitrex, one of the best exchanges, one of the most trustworthy, and about number 60 in exchange volume. And then soon after, it was on Poloniex. And then I made some technology called Stealth Text, which I won't get into, but was kind of cool for the time. These days it would be considered terribly insignificant contribution, but back then it was enough to get a nice pump to about number 26, ruining the stealth brand. Everybody associated it with this big pump, and you know, my name was Mud because I was a real name dev. But I just want to point out the very first part of this timeline is Bitcoin gets pumped too, right? As it is getting pumped right now. And then we got on Cryptsy and MintPal, two debt exchanges, which were huge additions for us at the time. And then time went on, and I was doing my job as a researcher, and we got delisted from Poloniex, even though we had good volume. I'll never figure that one out. And then I took up, recently I've taken back to developing, and I removed transaction timestamps from the protocol, which everybody's here like, why does that even matter? But trust me, it's cool. And then most recently I've worked on quantum proof of stake, and it's in testnet. So let's get the quantum proof of stake. Well, first of all, it's proof of stake. It's in the name. It means you have coins. The coins allow you to sign blocks. And instead of, if you compare it to Bitcoin, where mining allows you to sign blocks, okay? And the features that we want from quantum proofs of stake are fast and scalable. There's another feature which is that it's economically driven, which I'll talk about in a few slides. So what are the benefits of quantum proofs of stake? Is you can purchase your rights to sign blocks. That's a proof of stake paradigm, but not all proof of stake coins actually use purchasable rights as a paradigm. And I'll explain what those mean. And these rights can be transferable. I'm a big believer in transferability. Once you get transferability on a blockchain, what you have is a token. So the rights to sign block are tokenized. I'll discuss the tokens. And then what you get in quantum proof of stake is performance-based rewards. This, believe it or not, is similar to proof of stake. It's dissimilar with other high-performance algorithms or protocols, and kind of similar to Bitcoin in that the performance is the hashing power. And then there's the next feature is economic governance, which means that you're under no pressure by any stakeholders to do anything except yourself, your own self-interest. So I'm not some crazy libertarian, but I do believe in economic incentivization of behavior, and I've tried to embrace that with stealth. And then finally, because of all these other properties, you don't get politics or cartels that you can see in other coins. So what are the benefits of quantum? Oh, some more benefits of quantum proof of stake under the fast heading are it has 5-second block times. Compare that with, say, Bitcoin, where Bitcoin has 10-minute block times, and the blocks are irregular. This has 5 minutes regular block times. And then layered on top of this, we can have what's known as a Byzantine fault tolerance, which is finality of transactions within seconds. And then the final feature, the main feature, is that it's scalable, and the way this is achieved with fast, regular block intervals, which means blocks come very fast, very regularly, and because of the structure of the network and the validators, the blocks can actually be bigger and carry more transactions. So because it's a blockchain conference, I want to kind of put stealth quantum proof of stake into context. So what's the status of blockchain in 2019? This might be a little bit more technical than what you'll see in the main ballroom in there. So first of all, kind of compare where we are historically, right? You can look ahead and think about history. What is our place right now? Well, just imagine the state of flight 10 years after, we're about 10 years after the Bitcoin was invented. The state of flight 10 years after planes were invented were these biplanes here, I guess, state of the art. And in modern day, we have this Airbus A380, these giant planes, super fast planes. So obviously there's some technological progression here. We can even see technological progression with photography, which was pretty young during the first times of the first plane. And this little plane in front is about as big as a 737. Which is what most of us flew here in, unless we came over the ocean. So what are the areas for improvement in blockchain? I think these are the areas for improvement, and these are the areas that I want to address with stealth. First is fungibility. That fungibility is where any unit on the blockchain can be substituted for any other unit on the blockchain. Believe it or not, Bitcoin doesn't have fungibility. There are blacklisted addresses that can't send money, and probably all these addresses that just escaped out of Binance, those are probably blacklisted on some level. So these coins are not truly interchangeable. Then it needs to be scalable. It needs to serve a large number of people very fast. Transaction speed, which goes down to user experience. And then fees. A cryptocurrency can be feeless, not free, feeless. Cryptocurrency can be feeless, so let's try to make it feeless. And I'm just throwing that up there to give you a sense of where I think Bitcoin is, and that is the future. That's the Airbus A380 or whatever it is over on the left, and Bitcoin these days over on the right. So we have room to improve technology. Oh, and adoption. This is what I think about adoption. Basically, build it and they will come. If you wanted to get it adopted, make a better plane. So you can imagine how retarded somebody would sound if they said, yeah, there's no adoption back in 1910 when you were talking about airplanes. Okay, so electronic cash, Bitcoin or whatever, needs to be scalable. And this just gives a sense of the scalability goals, right? So Bitcoin, the mempool is filling up. I don't know if it's filling up these days, but a few weeks ago it was filling up, which means to set capacity. And then you can compare it. It's got 175 million transactions. Apple Pay has 10 billion transactions per year, and then Visa's got this whopping 140 billion. So the size of the circles, the area of those circles represents the transaction throughput of these different payment systems. So blockchain has a long way to go, and Bitcoin in its current state can't support it except if you consider Lightning Network. And I won't offer a critique of Lightning Network today, but I don't believe it's the optimal decentralized solution. So electronic cash needs to be fast, and one thing I should concede with this slide is electronic cash, Bitcoin, is blazing fast by comparison to other payment systems. And you're probably thinking, wait, what about PayPal and credit cards? But let's just think about this for a second, okay? So first, when you do an international wire, it can take around 5 days, okay? If you're lucky, if you don't have any hang-ups on the way where your money disappears, and it could be weeks because of a clerical error or a holiday in some foreign country. And a domestic wire, which means in the United States, domestic, I don't know about other countries, is about 1 day. Bitcoin, the block times are targeted at 10 minutes. They're not always 10 minutes. Probably the average time is a little longer than 10 minutes. But Bitcoin, it seeks to have 10-minute blocks, and it kind of does. And if you try to look at what 10 minutes means and just compare it to domestic wire, I've got that little sliver that's about 1 pixel wide over on the left. That's how fast Bitcoin is. So what we're comparing in these is an international wire goes from bank account to bank account. That's settlement. Domestic wire, bank account, settlement, Bitcoin settlement in 10 minutes. That's that single transaction. It probably indicates it's irreversible. That single confirmation that's probably indicates it's irreversible. PayPal, I have to put an asterisk by. And credit cards, it's like it takes 1 minute to make a transaction. But if you're a vendor, you don't have settlement for weeks, right? It could be a long time before they actually give you can actually spend that money. That's not a true transaction. That's not true both ends of the equation. So you have to put asterisks on there because you're kind of comparing apples to oranges, because Bitcoin gives finality in 10 minutes, PayPal gives finality in weeks or whatever they decide. And then there's other cryptocurrencies that want to compete with the user experience of PayPal and credit cards. And what are these? For quantum proof of stake, our target is about 5 seconds. And I base that off of, and this will be 5-second confirmation, so 5-second settlement. I base that off on the credit card. About 10 seconds is how long if you put a credit card into the reader at the grocery store. It takes about 10 seconds before it says, please remove card, right? So that's the user experience, about 10 seconds. BitShares was one of the first delegated proof of stake coins, if not the first, has 3-second block times. And Nano, which is a coin that is tuned for performance, that has 5 half-second block times, 1/2 of a second. And that means you get settlement in half a second. So compare settlement of Nano to these other payment systems. It's insane. You don't have to be that fast in order to have a good user experience. I believe it should be about 5 seconds, and so that's what we aim for. If you don't have to make it so fast, don't, especially if you have other considerations. Nano is a pure payment platform. Stealth wants to be a private payment platform, and that's going to carry some computational overhead that's going to make half-second blocks hard to achieve. So this is just to drive home the point that fees are important, and cryptocurrency, electronic cash should be feeless. So everybody's like, Visa, I'll just pay with Visa. It's better than everything. It's better than Bitcoin. Not if your grocery store doesn't take it. It's not better. It's no better than Bitcoin. And this was my grocery store I always go to, like every week, and they stopped taking my credit cards. Like now I have to take cash to the grocery store. Okay, so it's true. And they discontinued Visa for high fees. So fees matter. Okay, so electronic cash is feeless, but what are the fees are we paying for settlement on these different platforms? This is going to be paid by one end or the other, either the sender or the receiver. For international wire, the fee is about $40. For PayPal, just to send $1,000. If you see in the lower right-hand corner of the slide, I don't have a pointer. For a PayPal, it's going to be about $30.20 for $1,000. For a credit card, it's $27.50. For domestic wires, 20. For Bitcoin, it was about 54 cents when I made this slide. I don't know what it's at today. It could be higher, actually. And BitShares, I believe 54 cents was to get it within one confirmation. And the fees can go up in order to sort of try to get that guarantee. BitShares is a really fast one. Remember that had the 3-second block times? That one is about 2.8 cents when I made this slide a few weeks ago. Dodge is 0.4 of a single cent. So, and then they're down at the bottom, it's kind of hard to see because the formatting looks a little bit different. Quantum proof of stake and Nano, remember that one with the half-second block time? It's a pure transaction platform. That one's these aim to be feeless, not free, but the fee would be 0. What do I mean by not free? I'll try to explain that if there's time. So let's check out what the state of consensus is these days. And what I did here is this is a Venn diagram where you make these areas and you put different things that fall into these different categories into the areas, and sometimes they overlap. And this is my best effort to interpret the state of blockchain. And I've left some good ones out, or some big ones. I've left out on this slide, I think I left out Tron. I've left out ARC, who supports consensus, so gosh, what an oversight. But let's check it out. At the top, you have proof of stake in the yellow. And in the top 100 coins, or top like 40 or 50 coins, you could only really find 2 pure proof of stake coins. On the left is Qtum, on the right is Cosmos that goes by the sticker symbol Atom. And strangely enough, these are proof of stake coins that are also smart contract platforms. So in order to get to be in the top, the interpretation to me is in order to get to be in the top 100 coins as proof of stake, you need to be a smart contract platform too. And then under that, overlapping with proof of stake is what you might think of pure delegated proof of stake. And this might be a misclassification. This is Tezos under there. It's also a smart contract platform, and you can delegate staking authority to block signers. But this might just be a clerical sort of conception. It may not be true delegated proof of stake. What I consider true delegated proof of stake is, I'm going to have to point. It's that area. Okay, that's the original delegated proof of stake concept, where stakeholders vote for block signing delegates. And these block signing delegates will then sign blocks. And if you noticed I said vote for, I believe that the voting process makes it a political type blockchain that is not a true decentralized blockchain in certain conditions. And there's one cool coin, actually, it was cool, it's Steam. And check out where that one overlaps. That one overlaps with scheduled block signing, delegated proof of stake, scheduled block signing with proof of work and proof of stake. And at one point in its history, it actually fell in that category. So I went and put it there. It actually had a proof of work component. You could mine Steam as well as have delegated block signers. So it was a cool coin. And then they took out proof of work for some reason. They couldn't make it work. I don't know really what the problem was. And then down here, you have asynchronous block production where the blocks are not necessarily in order. The transactions are not necessarily fully ordered with respect to each other. And there are two in that category two big ones that I could find in that category or think of is on the lower left with the spirally icon is IOTA. And up there, and that's fully asynchronous and it's proof of work. And the security model is actually not proof of work. It's checkpointing by a centralized entity, the IOTA Foundation. So I don't even know if this is a true cryptocurrency at this point. And then the one right up there with the cool N logo, that's Nano. That's the one with the fast block times, with the Feeless, the pure payment platform. And that has asynchronous blocks with the delegated model, but it's not a delegated proof of stake in the sense of these scheduled block signing ones. And down here at the bottom is proof of work, the ones we all know and love and familiar with. The king of all crypto at top there is Dodge. No, I'm just kidding. But hey, I mean, everybody loves Dodge, right? And then, of course, the king of crypto is Bitcoin, and Litecoin and Monero, which is an anonymous coin, okay? All right. Okay, so we got to the state of the blockchain. And so here we have a fungibility. And I discussed what that was. Fungibility is any unit can be substituted for any unit. And fungibility boils down to being unable to answer this question. If you're unable to answer this question, you have a fungible payment solution. Who has owned this money? If you can look at this money and tell me who owned it, you don't have a fungible system. Of course, if somebody gives you a $100 bill and they go, who's owned this $100 bill? And you can't find out, you know that's a private, fungible, anonymous currency. And $100 bills are that way. That's why you see in the drug movies the big guy with the big briefcase of $100 bills opening up, because unless they've been marked somehow, you know, they're a fungible currency and they'll work for this application. So cash, US dollars, is the #1 fungible big currency that's used by drug dealers in movies. And and so this is it. And I've made the Facebook logo up there, because people, believe it or not, Facebook has done cryptocurrencies a tremendous favor, and that it's brought to light that, you know, people value privacy. Back in the like 5 years ago, if you said privacy, they'd look at you and go, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to lose. And nowadays they're like, yeah, Facebook just sold all your private information to, you know, whatever your least favorite country is, and they're like, oh my God, my privacy. So thanks, Facebook. So there's two concepts I have to cover that in order to have a vocabulary to get through this talk. And the first concept is that of an account-based ledger. And welcome to, you know, Accounting 101 here. Hopefully you're awake after this slide. But with an account-based ledger, you have different accounts. So here we have Bob's accounts and Alice's accounts. They have starting balances of 100. Bob pays Alice $2. And so you credit Alice's account with 2, and you debit Bob's account with 2, and the balances are changed. And anyway, that's what an account is. You have different accounts, and you just adjust the balances on the account. That's an account-based ledger. Okay. it's excruciating to talk about as it is to listen to. But you can actually visualize an account-based ledger here, like Bob takes some coins, he sent it to Carol, and then Carol sent it to somebody, Alice sent it to somebody. But this type of system can't be fungible because the coins have a provenance, and if you know the provenance, you're not fungible. And what if you had something where some system where you didn't know who was the intermediate party, this guy in orange here with the question mark? Well, you could probably infer it using other information. And there's a cultural reference here, Bob, Carol, Ted, and Alice. And this is just an example of inference. You can infer who did it with some other information, some contextual information that you might get from some sort of statistical analysis of the blockchain. Big data, as they call it. So here I'm gonna rip on a coin. So Mimblewimble offers this privacy solution. I just made that slide. I was like, oh man, that's Mimblewimble privacy. If you cut out the intermediary there in the transaction chain, that's how Mimblewimble achieves privacy. What you do is Bob will send to Carol, Carol sends to somebody, and somebody sends to Alice, and then the miners take these transactions after they've been broadcast to the network where people could be snooping, like governments or bad guys. And then the miners have to reorganize the transactions in coin join type thing. And the miners, you have to trust the miners not to keep a history of the transactions and so on. So they're trusted. So you have a trusted party in this anonymity solution. The consensus algorithm's trustless, but the anonymity solution doesn't appear to be trustless to me. And anyway, if anybody can convince me otherwise, I'll stop making this slide. But this is how I imagine the Mimblewimble miners. They see no evil, hear no evil, and that's what goes in the blockchain. But some of these monkeys might have a USB drive keeping these transactions around. So then so the next concept is UTXO ledgers. To me, this is more interesting because you can do more things with them, but a UTXO concept might be foreign to a lot of people. You might hear that a lot in blockchain. It's kind of a mouthful. It has an X in the middle of it, which is, makes the whole acronym a little bit rough. But how's it work? So here's an example. So this guy, Satoshi Nakamoto, has 100 stealth coins to send to his friend Hal Finney, and he wants to make change with it, but he wants to send 90 to Hal Finney. So he has this $100 input, it's like a traveler's check, and it's called an input, and then he signs it. When he signs it, that transaction on a blockchain, he's signing it cryptographically. When he signs that transaction, that 100 stealth can no longer be spent, okay? And then he makes 2 new checks, one to his friend Hal Finney for 90 stealth, and he makes change to himself, another one to himself, and these are called outputs. So the unspent checks is what I'm calling them here. You can think of those as unspent outputs, unspent transaction outputs. Boom, we've got the acronym, so we understand what that means. And that's as complicated as a UTXO model has to be. The only further complication might be fees, but I'm just ignoring fees. See, like the inputs add up to the outputs, 90 plus 10 equals 100, and so there's no fees there. But fees can be written as a separate check. They can just be deducted from the change, you name it. But that's the concept in full there. Now, the cool thing about a UTXO model is that it can be cryptographically shuffled. It's beyond the scope probably of this conference to even talk about how you shuffle inputs, but unlike accounts where they had to be registered and you could make inferences from the transaction chain, UTXOs, you can take all the UTXOs and they can create what's called an anonymity set. And if you don't know how much those are, the full chain is the anonymity set, and you don't know which ones were spent, which combination were spent, and you don't know and you can make it such that you don't know who the recipient is either. So you can if you can accept, and there are systems like Zcash and Monero that seem to achieve this. If you can accept that, you can accept that UTXOs can have a full cryptographic anonymity, and if you have anonymity, you have privacy. If you have privacy, you have fungibility, and you're making a good electronic cache. So yeah, the next slide, somehow I kind of missed a transition slide here, but the next topic is block scheduling. And so in block scheduling, here's the problem. If you look at Dodge and Bitcoin, they're unscheduled. They're proof of work blocks. And so you can see that the block times are highly irregular and sometimes, much longer than the target time. So for example, Dodge is intended to have 1 minute block times, but if you look over on the left, if it's readable back there, I don't know if it is, between the second and third blocks there was 3 minutes. So that's pretty far away from the 1 minute block time. So this is a problem. So proof of work, trust me, I believe it's a beautiful invention, but it doesn't produce regular block times. And Bitcoin blocks are similar. I mean, if you look right here, that's 41 minutes between that 30-minute and hour 11-minute blocks. That's the block that gets me whenever I need to send some Bitcoin somewhere like that. Okay, okay, so the transition slide is in the wrong place. There we go. So let's check out what scheduled block production really does. If you look at those last two slides, you'll see that those block times are regular, and if you kind of plot those on a time axis, and the blocks are these colored boxes, you can see, well, sometimes they have a gap between them, sometimes they have a small gap, a big gap. That makes for kind of a bad user experience. If you have a scheduled block to production, means you can have a block regularly spaced, right on time. It makes for great user experiments. You can conceivably pack more blocks per unit of time, and if you have the right sort of trust model underneath, you can have these blocks bigger and not worry as much about network topology of the network of computer nodes. So here's what I was going to talk about with delegated proof of stake. It's a great invention because it uses the scheduled block production that I just showed on the previous slide, except that it's delegated and it has this voting for block producers component. And when you vote for block producers, it makes it a political construction rather than a true trustless construction that's based on economics, which is how I think is the best way to incentivize behavior on a blockchain. And the colored area, I guess I don't need a pointer for that, shows the delegated proof of stake coins. There's at the top, that's Lisk, BitShares, EOS, and the bottom right is Steam. But there's plenty of others like ARC who does sponsor this conference. So I'm going to pick on EOS, okay? We'll see if there's any tomatoes up here, but I believe it's worth it. So, so EOS is centralized, okay? And you could argue about what centralization means, but to me, centralization means that if some entity doesn't support your right to sign blocks, I mean, besides you, then the blockchain is controlled by a centralized authority. And here you can see it visualized at this website, eosauthority.com, where Bitfinex and Huobi, or I think it's pronounced Horby, I'm not exactly sure, pretty much control the witness list, okay? And how many of these, one question we could ask for ourselves is, which of these block producers, are affiliated with Bitfinex or Horby? I'm guessing more than a few. Okay, I don't know for sure. Oh yeah, I'm talking about EOS, I got to talk about the logos. All right, ARC logo came out in 2014, EOS came out in 2017. All right? Okay, so I was going to talk about the dangers of delegated proof of stake. And so we saw in that slide, previous to the logo slide, that delegated proof of stake can be centralized, that you can visualize it on the EOS chain. And let's check out a headline I saw. I Googled EOS cartel, right? And so here's the headline. Block One vows to use its EOS token to prevent voting cartels. The $4 billion company yada yada is vowing to use its tokens to break up any voting cartels. And so you can see what this is. I call this the delegated proof of stake style solution, right? Is you use your status as your dictator to break up cartels. So it's kind of, I call this the qPoS paradox. And he's not face palming. He's really thinking about the paradox. And and it's where you fight centralization with greater centralization. It just happens all over in distributed proof of stake. And so the reason I'm picking on EOS in particular is I don't think I'm going to drive its market cap down with this talk. If it is, then you better go buy stealth. And then also, it's just it's a poster child for this kind of thing because there's been so much written on it. But one good thing that came from BitShares, because this is the original coin that came up with this concept of block scheduling. The good thing from it that you can extract from it is this block scheduling. And how does this work? Well, you have all these registered signatories or validators. I call them signatories, and then our marketing name, which is horrible name, is stakers. All these registered stakers or signatories or validators, delegates, they're all on the blockchain and we know who they are, and because they're listed on there. I just showed that EOS website with all those validators listed. Those can be shuffled in around. So here we have 6 registered stakers, six validators. They're shuffled into this new order of 4, 6, 2, 5, 1, 3. And as each validator's turn comes up in the queue, they attempt to add a block to the end of the blockchain. And after a certain amount of time here, I've got 5-second blocks. That block has to be added in 5 seconds, and then this next guy's turn. In this case, it's number 1 in red, and he adds a block, or she. And this is block scheduling technique in a nutshell. You have a queue, you randomize it, you have block signers. Each block signer adds a block when it's their turn to add a block. If they miss it, it's on to the next guy's turn. You get fast, regular blocks. And this works. EOS works. BitShares works. All these other coins really, really work, unless if there's some smaller coin with some problems that the devs haven't worked out. So quantum proof of stake uses scheduled block signing, okay? But it combines it with what I think of as an economic solution, and I believe in the simplest solutions. Okay, so what's the solution? You just buy it. You buy your right to sign blocks. How easy is that? And check it out. So stakers are non-fungible tokens. So it's cool we have an NFT swag bag here. It's a virtual bag, of course. But they're called non-fungible tokens. So stakers themselves are not currency. They're not fungible. They're different. Like any validator cannot be just substituted with another validator. And the staker is not trying to be fungible. So you take some stealth coin, which hopefully is fungible at some point whenever anonymity is fully implemented, is mined into existence. I'm calling it mined even though it's proof of stake because it was originally mined and stakeholders have had it. The miners or people they sold it to have had it ever since then and they may have staked. But the stealth itself that underlies the whole system was mined at the beginning, so I'm calling it mined. And then you can burn this stealth. Okay, it's completely destroyed. Burning may not be the exact phraseology that we want to use, but the stealth is destroyed, eliminated from the money supply, and you get a staker, and it's a permanent entity, and you can never get the stealth back unless if you can find somebody to transfer the staker to. So that would be basically an OTC sale over the counter. And then you have all these registered stakers. Instead of validators or delegates that were voted on, you just have a set of validators who bought a token that gives them the right to validate. One token equals one slot in a queue. A person or an entity, a corporation could have more than one token. I try to make the economics to where there's not an infinite number of tokens, there's this finite amount of tokens, but everything is economically driven. You can see somebody could come up here and give a roast of me and call me all sorts of names, and even though I founded the coin and I bought a lot, I couldn't do anything to their block signing rights except maybe buy more stakers and give them fewer blocks. That's all I could do. I can't vote away their right to sign blocks because they purchased their blocks. And even if I were to buy a bunch of stakers, if I bought too many, that would actually hurt me because the stakers are all fighting over a finite reward pool, which I'll talk about. So this is the price of stakers. This goes to, should you buy too many? Can I just buy away somebody's block signing rights? I guess I could if I wanted to, go broke. But you can see over here, as you get more stakers, the number of stakers goes up. The price of each staker goes up. And on the left is the absolute price if you assume a 31 million coin money supply, which is what it was when I made this slide. It's up now because the money supply is increasing because it's proof of stake coin. And then this next one on the right is pretty much is not going to change. This is the staker price, is the percent of the money supply. So it continuously goes up, and the reason it goes up as a percent of the money supply is so that at some point there's going to be a price point where somebody's going to go, it's not economic, doesn't make any economic sense for me to buy a staker. So this is a price discovery mechanism, and on a theoretic basis, this is what's known as a reverse auction. So a reverse auction can have open bids, you can have sequential bidding, and if all these things are true, then you can find a reliable price point for the stakers. Okay, so yeah, I have time to discuss the network clock. So in testnet, I realized that if you had a super volatile testnet, a super volatile network, which I don't expect in mainnet, the network can completely fragment. And when the nodes, each computer in the network is called a node, in case you're not familiar with the network terminology. When the nodes try to reconnect, they have to achieve consensus again. So if they're sitting there, they may not realize they're disconnected from the network, and they will continue to produce blocks even while they're disconnected, because there's no way for a node on a network to know if it's disconnected from the network. This is like a theoretical thing that you have to really think about in order to realize. But every node is like an island unto itself, and it doesn't really know what's going on around it. It can never really know. And this is the heart of the Byzantine generals problem, which Bitcoin solved. But here we're talking about a time consensus rather than consensus of the money supply. But how does a quantum proof of stake network clock go? Okay, so hopefully this isn't awkward. This is the first time I've really tried to explain it actually. So you can look on the left, you have a clock. This is a network clock, and it's the queue. The queue is what organizes the stakers. That has a clock. What time does the queue think it is? That's what is the network state. Okay, and at 8 o'clock, oh, well, it's not 8, it's 4:20. This talk started at 4:20, so the clock says 20. So at 20 minutes past the hour, there's a block there, and then a block is added to the chain. This is a sequence of events. First, the block is added to the chain by number 4, the green block. That block has a timestamp with it of 5 seconds past 20 minutes and 5 seconds. Only when that block hits the blockchain and is accepted to the local blockchain will the network clock increase in time. So now the network clock says what the blockchain clock. I'm just going to point at it. So the network clock says 2005 and the block says 2005. That's just a key point. So you don't update the network clock until the block gets in. So the blocks, the network events, are what keeps the clock, okay? And then on the next one, staker 6, because they're the next one in the queue, 4, 6, 2, 5, 1, 3. The staker 6 adds a block 5 seconds later, so now it says 20 minutes and 10 seconds, and then the network clock advances to the time of the block. And then just in this example, we're pretending that 2 and 5 get skipped for some reason, and then 1 adds a block. 1 slot comes after 2015, that was skipped, 2020 was skipped, 20 minutes and 25 seconds, and that one adds a block. And then the network clock jumps from 10 to 25. And there's probably a couple of people in here that might recognize what kind of clock this is. This is called a lamp. I looked this up because I'm a biochemist. I'm not like an expert in distributed computing, although I'm starting to learn more about it. This is called a Lamport clock, except that instead of a counter, you use timestamps. So this is actually, I sort of rediscovered this after people much smarter than me discovered it a long time ago and completely formalized it. I rediscovered this principle that you can use a network clock if you have a totally asynchronous environment like a blockchain, and or you make the assumption that it's an asynchronous environment. And so, so one question that I'm going to try to answer with this slide to get a little bit deeper into this clock, because it is an invention that the only thing is I believe it is unique to blockchain. So that's the only reason I'm presenting it here today, is how does the outside world time translate into these block times? Okay, and that's pretty simple. You have, all around the world are government time servers. We would all, here in this room, be using something, if we want to know what time it is, we look at our cell phone. That's coming from a tower, from a cell phone tower. That tower is synchronizing to a government time server somewhere. And so we all are going to have the same time on our phones, unless if we're completely disconnected in airplane mode and our clock starts to drift. So each staker gets the time from the time server, and it has an internal clock, like this number 4 staker here, and his computer or her computer has 20 minutes and 5 seconds as their network clock, as their internal hardware clock on their computer. And when they mint a new block, going from that white new block up there to the green bordered block, they add that timestamp to that block. And then that time-stamped block hits the network, and the network clock updates on that new block. And let's see if there's anything. Yes, so the key part of this slide is that blocks are the only source of network time for the network. Even though you're like, oh, isn't the time server the source of the network time? No, the time server is only the source of the local time for each computer. Each computer may have a different time server, or they may just like not even want to use a time server. And so, but how does the network get synchronized? It uses the timestamps from the network events, which are the blocks. And this is different from Bitcoin and probably pretty much every other coin, in that the other coins just have, they poll their peers. Every node will poll its peers and say, hey, what's your time? And they'll give it, and then the local clock will be adjusted based on that polling data. And that's actually a fragile system. And this type of Lamport clock, is much more robust than this fragile polling style synchronous clock. So that's pretty deep stuff, I know, but I thought it was cool, and hopefully some people here might think it's cool as well. So how does quantum proof of stake use chain trust? I guess this will be the last section. I have like a couple more, but we don't have to go all that far. Chain trust is a hugely important issue in blockchain. In fact, establishing trust is the problem that Bitcoin solved with proof of work. Which chain do I trust? Well, it's the one with the most provable work on it, right? So quantum proof of stake is a proof of stake, so we establish chain trust a little differently. And what we use is something I call staker weight, and this is actually unique to blockchain as well. I haven't found anything like it, and our IP lawyer said, oh, you ought to just patent this. Okay, so we have a patent on it, and it won't be enforced. It's like a patent cert just in case somebody wants to sue me for something. And so we have a staker weight. How does a staker weight work? Okay, it's a little mathematical, but it's really simpler than it looks. Basically, as you sign blocks, and as a staker signs blocks, their weight will increase except it will decrease if they miss blocks. So you can take the number of blocks they're assigned times twice the number they miss. This is called the net blocks. It's the same as the number of blocks you actually signed, not assigned, but signed or produced minus the number you missed. That's the same thing. That's called a net block. And you just take the square root of that. So this curve here, rather than, I don't know if people have a feel for how a square root function goes. I certainly don't without looking at this slide. But as the number of blocks go really, really high to 100,000, the weight actually doesn't climb that much. But what it does is it says the better your performance as a staker, the better performance staker is, the more we trust that staker. It's not linear, it goes as a square root, but there's a correlation between performance and trust. So it's really performance-based. And that weight is calculated from its performance. And also, I should say that also their rewards are calculated from their historical performance as well. But how is chain trust calculated? Okay, so here we have 4 stakers, just to make it, we're getting more simpler and simpler here. And these are the registered. It's not exactly in order of the queue, just the registered stakers, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Here 3 will add, and then 1 will add. And 3, so the growing chain has a chain trust. That's trust over the entire chain of 1,000. And staker 3 adds a block, and you can see the number right under it is 5. It has a weight of 5, so that chain trust increases by the staker weight, 5. It's easy math. You just add the staker weight, and you have a new chain trust. And you can imagine if you have 2 competing chains, and one has higher trust than the other, we know which chain that we should accept and we should trust. Say if we're, an exchange or another block validator. And then just to drive the point home, we have a chain trust of 1,005 in the middle there at the very bottom. It jumps to 1,025 because staker number 1, which adds that block, has a weight of 20, and that gets added to the chain trust. So here we can see that stakers are trusted based on performance, and they're also rewarded on performance. And oh man, I have 4 minutes left. I'm just going to go to the end, and then we can just skip questions, right? I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, or unless anybody has any burning questions. Okay. Yes.
All right. So I've been following your coin a lot, and I've read your blog, and I saw that you recently implemented the quantum proof of stake. The coin has doubled in the last couple of months because of that. And I just want you to tell me, what's the difference? What is that, like in a summary? I mean, you did a great explanation, and I was totally clueless about timestamps, and now I learned it. But I know the market's really accepting, this new change that you implemented. So what's the difference between you and the other privacy coins?
Yeah. Okay. So at the moment, it doesn't have the full privacy solution on it. That will be implemented after quantum proof of stake goes to mainnet.
Double again, so I can go buy some more
I
coins?
don't know. It could go to 0. I don't know, man. Just assume it's going to go to 0. Okay, that's the official statement from the dev. It's going to crash to 0. Okay, so well, don't short it. Okay, because then you're like, hey, you said it was going to crash to 0. Oh, I can go over. Okay, well. I'll have mercy on my audience and keep it within the boundaries. And so, yeah, the difference between Stealth and other privacy coins, when we get the full privacy solution, it's partially private now, it has stealth addresses. When we get the full privacy solution, what we'll have is a really fast blockchain. So imagine privacy that you can depend on settlement within 5 seconds. That's the goal. So transaction finality, this A-Byzantine fault tolerance, which is not implemented yet, can be done in 5 seconds. Yeah, I'm just going to skip to the end. Let me see here, just so I can. Oh, yeah. I had one little section, but I'll skip it anyway. Okay, just skip to our website. So we got a cool website, stealth.org. It's easy to remember and go there. And one thing you can see on that is if you go to, the best place to go, in my opinion, is /news. If you want to get a jump, on the market and go, okay, this is going to 0, or I think this is going to go up, go to our news section. I write a blog each week, except when I'm doing things like preparing this talk for this conference and all the associated stuff. Every week I try to get out a development block. You can see where I am in development. And now you can actually track GitHub, and links to all that are at stealth.org. And yeah, thank you for listening to me today. Oh, and we come by our booth. We have these. We'll give these out. Okay, it's the last day tomorrow. Come by and get free ledgers, free. Why are we? And if you're worried if they're legit, just ask the ledger guys. They're right in the booth across from us. The CEO's over there. Show him one of these. He goes, "Is this legit?" And he'll tell you. And we're giving away, we were going to sell them when we originally purchased them, but because of licensing and stuff, it's really hard to find a way to sell these things, so we're just giving them away at conferences. So come get some of these and some other swag. Okay.